For sample 4, you're doing a gathering stitch, so you need to get your machine back to a 1 on the stitch selector. And I'm actually just going to power my machine off and turn it right back on. And then to do this, we need to increase our stitch length. So the plus and minus buttons on the top with the stitch length, we're going to increase it to a 5, which is the highest stitch length that we can get. And we want to do that so that we are going to be putting in this long basting stitch that we can gather up. You want to start out with tails that are long, and what that means is that you have both bobbin and needle thread coming out just several inches hanging off. You've got your 6-inch square folded in half, finger press again, and then we're going to be sewing along the folded edge. With this first sample, I'm just going to line it up with the edge of the presser foot. For this sample, when you're doing a gathering, you do not want to do any back stitching at all because you need movement on the thread. You do not want to have it secured, okay? So I'm just going to stitch even with the presser foot, 4/8. Okay, when we get to the other end, again, do not back stitch. You're just going to lift up your needle. You'll pull out to the side of the left of the machine and cut some long tails again. You're going to keep those tails hanging, okay? The next thing you're going to do is you're going to look on your throat plate. There's a number 2. It is actually in line with what would be 6/8. And so I'm going to look at that 2 and the line that goes underneath it on the throat plate to line up the edge of that fold now. So these are going to be 2 parallel stitches that are 2/8 of an inch apart. So I'm going to drop my needle, drop my presser foot. I'm going to stitch down. Again, no back stitching. Get to the end, lift my needle, pull off to the left, and then clip my threads. So what you should have is something like this where you have 2 parallel stitch lines. And for the next part, you're going to grab a hold of your threads that are coming from one thread from the top row of stitching and one thread from the bottom row. So one that is from the 4/8, I'm going to grab from this side. One that is from the 4/8 and one that is from the 6/8 seam. Okay, so I'm getting one. I'm going to grab onto those 2 threads together. There's one. Here's my other one. So what I have are just 2 threads, both coming from the same side. Okay, but from different rows of stitching. And what I need to do with those is I'm going to wrap them around my fingers. The next part is important. So I am going to then hold on to those 2 threads that I wrapped, and I am going to move the fabric along, just kind of glide it down. Okay, you do little bunches at a time. Then I like to rotate that loop again. And what I'm doing is I'm just gathering the thread and shifting it down. If we were doing this for a major project and it was something large, we would probably gather from one end to the middle and then gather from the other end to the middle. Since this is such a small sample, we're just going to gather it up from one side. Okay, but you just take the fabric and slide it down. You're shifting it, okay? And it ends up looking something like this. If you fold it over, it looks kind of like a little Barbie skirt, okay? But that is a sample for gathering. I want to show you something real quick. Do not do this, but I want to show you. So what some students will do is they'll take hold of those 2 threads just like I told them to, but instead of moving the fabric along, they will hold the fabric and they will pull their thread. And what they do then is they rip out the entire seam. Okay, so that's not what we want to do, but that's what happens sometimes. Okay, so try to avoid that and try to hold the thread and then glide and move the fabric.